Hey everybody, this is Neb, and this, look at this environment. It's a little bit depressing, a little bit overly dramatic, maybe too dramatic for this video, but this is where you do dailies, and I just came over here to this dock. You know, we've all been to this dock, right? And I'm here to make a video talking to you. It's just going to be a talking video, one where I'm not complaining about other people the whole time. So, where to start? So yesterday, I reached the breaking point, the culmination of frustration in Party Finder with Fru, as you know, right? Bit of a crash out, bit of a calling people out on their mistakes, and got some criticism, some support, some encouragement, and some healthy reminders. So let me bring you guys on a journey, because there seems to be a lot of people who are kind of not really aware of the shift in perspective between their experience and my own, and maybe struggling to kind of put themselves in another person's shoes, and that causes just like taking what I'm saying as it's presented, which is okay, totally okay, right? But when I present something, when I present an emotionally fueled, just expression of exhaustion and disappointment and frustration and anger, right? How does that actually correlate back to the real world? Now, this is unscripted. I don't script my videos, in case you didn't know. There have been maybe one or two that I scripted just because, what I was talking about, there were some key points that I would tend to forget, But for this one, I generally speak off the cuff, and I want to talk because it doesn't sit right with me. So in my last video, I criticized some tanks and a healer primarily for the alleged criticism was that they come into PF and they waste your time. And what does that mean? Wasting your time. So if you're someone who's struggling with a clear and you're working very, very hard, you're putting a lot of hours in, you generally want to have your time respected by the other people. Not to say that they have to be perfect, but that when they come into the party, they understand the assignment, they understand the mission, that they're there to help you, right? And not to distract you, not to make it all about them being the center of attention and having a good time with their friends, but they're there to genuinely help and try to get someone to clear. And a lot of people do this. In the game. Myself, it's something that I do as well when I'm not the one stuck in PF. This is rather a new experience for me, being so stuck, but it's one of those things where the most fun that an experienced player can have, and it's not for everyone, but it is helping other people clear. It's the same reason why I've grinded mentor roulette and why a lot of people grind mentor roulette, right? Some people do it for the mount, but then you have those mentors that are in extreme trials, clear for 7s with sprouts, and they so badly will do whatever it takes to clear Ramu or Leviathan extreme with 7 sprouts. And like, you got to teach the sprouts. Like anyone who's mentored before knows, right? You got to teach the sprouts. You need provoke on your bar. Where's your provoke? Where's your shirk? All right, let's get those on your bar. You can, and teach them, all right, you got to open up your spell book and you got to get those out and you got to place markers. And then in between your level 50 rotation, what are you doing? You're looking for the debuffs and you're marking players on the head. Here's a 1 marker. If you see a 1 above your head, go to the A marker, right? That is some of the most fun, because if you get that clear, like when you don't, it's disappointing, sure, but when you get that clear, 7 sprouts just being like, I never thought I could do it, and everyone's celebrating and everyone's cheering, and you're like, oh my god, they did it. That's so cool, and to be part of that is very, very fun. It's very rewarding. And that same mentor roulette experience translates over to ultimate proc. So for ultimates, when you are just helping people get their clears and they're freaking out and they're loving it, they're like, I can't believe I've done it. It is one of the most wholesome and just like their happiness bleeds over into you. You know what I mean? They've worked hard for it. They've been disappointed, and they grind and then they get frustrated to a point where like you see it. They're like, I'm at this wall, I'm at this mechanic, or I just can't seem to do this right. And they just keep working at it till they get it. It's so cool. It's so cool. That's why I have a lot of respect for people like, the sauce clear groups that clear people and they go in and help with all of that. And in my last video, I expressed, disdain for players who come in and in this environment of support and encouragement. Like imagine if a mentor goes into mentor roulette, right? And they're just talking about themselves the whole time, and they're saying, look at me, yeah, I cleared this fight, you know, without my job stone. I cleared Ramu X as a gladiator, you know. They come in there, and then every time the mentor is the one making the mistakes, not the sprouts. And they're going, oh, it works every time, works every other time. It just didn't work this time. And it's like blatant mistakes. And the sprouts are confused. The sprouts don't know why the mentor is like wiping the group on Ramu Extreme. But the mentor ends up wasting a lot of time, and then maybe the mentor gets one good pull, but then goes back to making mistakes. They're kind of underperforming, and they're just spending the whole time talking with their friends, and maybe there's another mentor in there, and they duo queued in by queuing at the same time. It's possible. And they're just talking the whole time, and the mentors aren't learning. The mentors aren't getting to their prog point, or the sprouts, right? And the sprouts are having a bad time, and then the sprouts end up not clearing. And the sprouts express frustration. They give a little sad face in the chat. This is the experience that I had in Froome, right? And so I had these players, and I was really frustrated. Now I mistargeted one of these players. I accused them of things, or at least I interpreted their actions incorrectly. Now part of that's my fault, part of that's their fault, but ultimately it's just a misunderstanding. And I want to talk about the white mage that I called out in my last video. The white mage, Euphrasia, right? Called them out. I said they have all these clears, but they don't seem to know the mechanics, and they're not responding when I tell them that they don't know the mechanics. They're not talking. They're just disbanding the party, right? And so they came into my comments last video, and what did they say? I'll paraphrase. But the long and short of it is they were like, I didn't know that I messed up. I didn't know that I messed up was one. And then two, I didn't mean to disband the party. Okay, well, it's still upsetting that you did disband the party. Sure, yeah, I'm like, I really wish you didn't do that. Yeah, I gave you leadership temporarily to invite your friends. Your friends come in, they're goofing off. I'm not appreciating this. This is supposed to be helping me, and yet clearly they're just here to hang out and have fun. Then they're gonna, you know, virtue signal or whatever in the comments and try to make themselves look good, but at the end of the day, you know, they're like that mentor who's goofing off and not taking it seriously, not trying to be helpful and mentor roulette. It's like, there's a time and a place to goof off with your friends and with your static. There's absolutely a time and a place. Clear from one parties are generally not that place. Now, some are more chill and goofy. When things are going well, absolutely, but things were not going well in our party. So you really have to sit there and evaluate, is this the time to goof off? And they didn't do that. And then they were surprised when I put a sad face in the chat. Sad face. That really, I guess, bothered them. They were very sensitive about the sad face in the chat. And that's you know, that's fine. You know, not everybody appreciates that, and certainly it is what it is. You know, that's the decision that I made. But for the healer in particular, it was an accident. You know, I pulled up their logs to look at their experience, and I said, this person has a lot of experience and a lot of good performance. So it seems like, you know, they should, know what they're doing. But they don't seem to know what they're doing. So I was bothered by that because it seemed intentional. It seemed like you're not trying your best. Like you're not acting in good faith in this party. But as it turns out, it was all human mistake and error. That's my fault for jumping to conclusions. Now, I did try to talk to them before making that video. I did. But when I tried to send the messages, it didn't work. And I was upset and I was frustrated. And I want to take you on the journey of that frustration. Because it goes beyond a single party. It goes far beyond a single party. It goes beyond a short period of progression. I want to explain to you why I got so frustrated. And this is not an excuse to be frustrated. I think being frustrated, being angry is a human reaction. It's expected. When you put someone in a certain situation, or if they put themselves in that situation for long enough, it's normal to have an adverse reaction. It's just like, you know, don't poke the bear. Like, yeah, the bear should calm down, but like that bear's not calm right now, so maybe just don't poke him right now. You know what I mean? And you can make every excuse in the book for why you shouldn't have to worry about not poking the bear, but at the end of the day, that bear is upset, just don't poke it. Like, that's just be considerate that that's going to have an adverse reaction, you know? And so I wanted to publicly apologize to the white mage. You know, I was totally wrong for that. I was blinded by my frustration. I mean, I was so blinded that I didn't even realize the real reason why we wiped on a P2. You know, like I was just frustrated. I needed to get it off because it was just building up and building up. And how did that happen? So this is the reality of my frustration. I started Fru when it first came out, but the frustration actually begins long before that. You see, I've been a static leader for a long time. And while as much as I've been praised for being an amazing static leader, the super patient static leader, nice to everyone and kind, I've also been called a hard ass and a jerk. And like, how can you be so straightforward? And how can you say those things? I've said things I've had to apologize before and genuinely apologize. You know, like you get frustrated, you say something, and then you come back and you say, you know, I know I was really hard on you and I accused you of not putting in the work. I see you are putting in the work. That was wrong to say. I'm sorry. And having those moments where like I am frustrated, but like it's not all your fault. Some of it is your fault. Like I do wish, you know, you tried a little harder in this area, but not all of it is. And that wasn't fair. It wasn't fair, my criticism of you, you know? And that's just something that everybody has to go through and everybody has to learn. And so for this white mage, for you, Frazier, I'm really sorry about that. You know, you did try to pull in friends in good faith. I believe that. I just think that your friends were more there to hang out with you than they were to actually keep the group on track, keep the group focused, and actually try to get things done. They were there to goof off and have a good time. And like, there's a time for that. I'm like that too. I goof off all the time in Fru. I do too. I just keep it to myself or to like my static. And sometimes I can't even goof off with my static. Like they need to focus and I need to shut up. That's a reality that we all learn as adults. Sometimes, even though you're entitled to goof off, you're entitled to have fun, you're entitled to quote unquote keep things lighthearted, there's a time where you need to shut up and keep it to yourself because you're a stumbling block for those around you. And that's your responsibility as an adult. I've had to learn that lesson. Your friends also have to learn that lesson, right? That's just the reality of life, you know? Like, it's like when, I can tell you a story. When I was 9 years old, my stepdad looked at me and he said, you cannot be in the front of the line. We were walking through the woods, my twin brother and my younger brother with me. He said, you cannot be in the front of the line. I will lead the group in the front, but I want you to be in the back so that your little brother doesn't get lost. And I was like, why do I have to be in the back? Why do I have to be in the back? I want to be in the front. I'm bigger. I'm older. Like, I'm having fun. We're traipsing through. We're adventuring. Why do I have to bring up the rear? It wasn't the time for me to focus on my fun and my lightheartedness and what I wanted to bring to the group. I wanted to lead from the front. It wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what my little brother needed, which was to make sure he doesn't get lost by being behind. That is a life lesson that everyone has to learn. And so when I come and say, these tanks, man, they're goofing off, they're making jokes, they're not addressing their mistakes, they're not encouraging the group with some sort of reassurance. They're saying, you should have told me you needed reassurance. That deflection of responsibility. I think my brother needed to tell me he could get lost. No, a mature adult's going to recognize, play it safe, right? That's just the reality. And so with those tanks, I had such a problem. But with that white mage, it was all this frustration at the same time, and I just didn't want to sit on this video that's getting way more views than I actually thought. My past couple videos have been getting like a couple hundred views, you know, not very many, last I checked. And so I really told myself it would be okay. And that was a mistake. But the thing about it too is that like I also have a little bit of that older mentality, a little bit of an older belief. Because I grew up from before the internet was around, and then I grew up when it came around, and then I've been around ever since. And so I come at the internet with a little bit of a different stance than some people. And even amongst people of my own age range, it can be a little bit different because I come from a place of accountability, responsibility, and honesty. And sometimes I think honesty trumps, in my cases, some other values that people would put first. And so when it comes to calling someone out, like, I make a video talking about my frustration about players that act in a certain way and giving example players by name, by character name, not real name. It's like nobody knows who they are, really, right? They're just a couple of players in PF, but not like you're going to see them at the grocery store and be like, that's Bob. He wipes P5, you know? Like, no, it's not like that. But people get a little sensitive because they prefer to be anonymous online, or there's like this unspoken and ungiven expectation of privacy just because you play a character in a video game. And And I come from a stance that you are responsible and accountable for the way you act, just as much as I have a video on YouTube right now that I could delete. I could delete this video and try to remove any sort of evidence that I wasn't humble and I misblamed a white mage for things that were just accidents. I could definitely delete that, right? But I think we're accountable for our actions. That's how I acted yesterday. I was very, very frustrated. It happens. We're human, right? And some people won't really understand that. They'll be like, oh, you're hypocritical, or they'll say things like, oh, yeah, one hand is mean to other people, but nice when it's to you. And like, they don't get it. You know what I mean? They don't have a lot of, I don't know, understanding of what it's like to go through experiences and how you live and you learn and you feel one way and you react and then you go, maybe shouldn't have done that. But then also holding true to the things that matter to you. So in my case, I have these warriors that are just being a stumbling block. They don't think that they are, I imagine they're a little bit younger. And then you have me calling them out by name and people getting upset about the lack of anonymous identity. And the thing about that is that the reason why I call them out by name is, again, down to accountability, right? Now, if I had like a large YouTube channel, if I had like all this attention and it was a concern that like, my audience is too bigger than I have influence over, they literally go out and harass people. If that was a thing, I would think twice. I would think twice before trying to bring up someone's character, because no one wants to get like a bunch of DMs in game and have to be blacklisting people all the time over something that, like, honestly, an outsider looking in isn't really going to understand. You know what I mean? 9 times out of 10 cases, they're going to have a misunderstanding or like half of the truth or like half the story, right? And then they're going to be harassing people over that. That's not what we want to happen. That's not really a concern with my channel, and you can tell me if you get harassed. That whole, man, Nem, you caused a couple of people to be real jerks. Like, all right, I'll own that, if that happens. I don't think that's really a risk here. I think that's more of a fear of a potential outcome rather than an actual reality that's going to take place, So it's not worth being worried about at the moment. It's been considered, but it's not worth being worried about right now. So people don't like being called out in that way. But just the same, if I make a video yelling at some white mage, it's okay for people to call me out on that and say, Nem, that's not a good look, brother, Nem, you were wrong about that. That's okay, man. I deserve that. If I'm wrong, then absolutely. And that's okay. So this anonymous thing, it'd be like pulling up somebody's Twitter account and being like, you can't talk about what I tweeted. It's like, man, you decided to act that way. That is a thing you did. Right? Now, I'm not going to be giving your real name out and your address and crap like that, but this Twitter handle, this person behind this Twitter handle said this stupid thing. You're accountable for that. If you don't like that people see that, you shouldn't do that to begin with. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's okay if it's private, but it's not okay if it's public. Then was it really ever okay at all? And in a lot of cases, I think you'll find that no, not all cases. Some things, like, it's fine private, but don't be doing it publicly. But in this context, like, look, if you're putting out stuff on the internet in front of other people, you need to be okay with that being seen by others, right? That's my approach. You may not like it, but that's the way the internet has worked forever. And the Final Fantasy community does have its own general, I guess, agreements or disagreements on those things. And that's okay too. Maybe for our community in 14, we kind of agree not to do that. I don't personally agree not to do that. I'm not someone who's going to go out of my way to hide people's names to try to protect their identity. And the reason for that is because here's the reality, right? If it's me, right, and it's easy to look at me like not a good use case because you say, well, Nem, you're comfortable in front of people, embarrassment and anxiety and stuff isn't as bad as for you as it is for someone else. And that's a huge assumption, to be honest with you. But let's take me as an example. If I get embarrassed about something like making a video and thousands of people watch it where I'm making an ass out of myself, yeah, that's embarrassing. And the normal reaction is going to be that you don't want people to see that. But at the end of the day, man, like, I did that. That's something I did. And I have a decision to make as an adult. Do I want to cover up my mistakes and be ashamed of them? Or do I want to learn and grow from them? That's it. So I think that that is a hard decision. Even coming to the point of having to make that decision can be tough for people, for sure. But this is a public forum. It's a public internet. It's a public Final Fantasy XIV, and these are public parties. You're not playing in a vacuum. How you act is attributable to your character. And then when I look at their logs and stuff like that, it's an information gathering tool. At no point did I criticize their normal performance. You know, I wasn't saying these are like garbage players and they're awful players and how dare they be bad. That's never what I said. I said these are good players that have a history of playing well. Why are they coming to my party and not giving their best effort? It's a little bit different of context. I'm not saying that how dare they not do enough damage. I'm saying how dare they not try harder? How do they goof off and make mistakes and then not actually be considerate of the people they're quote unquote trying to help, which is just virtue signaling, of course, right? They were actually there to help a friend. They like doing the fight. They're just there to have a good time. But that's not helping. That's you being there for your own enjoyment. And you can call it helping if you want, but that's cope, right? When you're helping someone in Party Finder, there's a time where you kind of feel the vibe of the group. Is the vibe of the group fun and happy? Who are we here to help? They set the vibe of the group. Look at the person who you were actually there to benefit and see how they're acting, right? It's common decency, common courtesy. So anyways, I mentioned to you that I will take you on this frustration journey because it started long before Fru. I've been the leader of a static for many years now. And before I was the leader of this static, I was the leader of another static. And before I was the leader of that static, I was the leader of another static. And I've been a member, not a leader, of plenty of statics in between. At one point, I was in 4 statics at the same time. But that was because I was extremely depressed at one point in my life after a severe breakup. And so I just literally was like, I'm going to throw myself into some hobbies that don't involve going outside. So no more paintball, no more playing guitar at the park, no more anything healthy, just going to raid until this depression goes away. And that's what I did. And so I was in 4 statics at the same time for various content. Most of it was just helping people clear ultimates. I'll join this static. I've already cleared like 20 times. No problem. I'll help you out because it's something to occupy my mind, right? So I've been a member of many statics. I've been a leader of statics. And before Final Fantasy XIV, I was a raid leader in many other games, right? So I have all this like tendency to just want to get people together to do stuff. And when it came to my frustration with Fru, is that it started back in T at the tail end of like that depressive episode that I had where I was just in a bunch of statics. I started a T static. I like had some alcohol. I was half drunk and I did the thing that I should never do is I joined a ultimate PF drunk, but it wasn't a clear, it was a fresh prog. And I knew this fight very, very well. So I wasn't making mistakes even though I was half drunk. I knew the first phase of T like the back of my hand. I could do it blindfolded because I had done it almost every week for 2 years. Not just the first phase, but just T. That's what I did for fun a lot. At some point in the week, maybe it's a Monday, maybe it's a Friday, I was going to do T, right? For 2 years. I knew the first few phases so well. And so I was comfortable making that decision. I disagree with that decision. I don't think it was, the right one, but I did. And it ended up working out because all those people, I took the time to, in a fun way, explain to them all the mechanics, the 3-point dance system for T, blah, 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 blah. And it started a static. They all asked me to start a static. And so I created a Discord. And that static has had some roster shifts, but eventually evolved into my static today. We've been together for years now, to the point where it was not originally a friend static, but as time has gone on, the expectations have kind of begrudgingly eroded a little bit into that friend static mentality. And that's not what I wanted it to happen. We just happen to be friends, happen to be a good time, and I have to make the decision, am I going to be the kind of friend and raid leader that's a hard ass and kicks people out when they make mistakes and when they don't show up and stuff, or am I going to be graceful in those moments? And so with T, there was a couple points of frustration, but nothing too bad. I literally just helped people learn their rotations and their mid plans, and I was very patient. But there was a lot of pain points where like they put a lot of strain on myself as the raid leader to do their homework for them, learning their rotations, telling them to use resources, not just providing the resources, but actually sitting down and saying, you're going to sim right now because you're stuck, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that, And then moving from T, we went to DSR, and that was just too much for a lot of them. and it required a lot of growth from a lot of players. And to be fair, like several of them never believed they would ever be good enough to clear DSR. And the entire time I told them, you're absolutely good enough, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of overcoming frustration. But if you push yourself to continue growing and learning and do not give up, you will absolutely get it done. And that's exactly what happened. But here's the thing, it took them 6 months to clear DSR. 6 months. I lost it internally. 6 months is way too long for me. I got stressed out. I got angry. I got frustrated because there was just so many things going on where people were getting, I don't know, they were making excuses mostly, not showing up to raid, people leaving the raid team because they had real life stuff come up, and then struggling to find a replacement and a schedule that works for everybody, juggling all of these things on top of people not really putting in their best effort. That really bothers me because I'm putting my best effort in every day for everybody else. I'm finding fills for the static. I'm doing the schedule. I'm moving heaven and earth around to be here. Like I've got a real life too. I've got stuff I got to do and people I care about, but I'll make it work. If that means sacrificing sleep, I'll make it work for you guys, And then to not have that effort repaid in I at least tried my best, but instead I'm given excuses. Well, I don't really like PFing. I don't really like practicing on my own. It's like, well, everyone else is doing it, you know what I mean? Or it's just like, yeah, I decided to play another Steam game for 6 hours instead of practicing, and then I was the mistake person for 2 weeks straight. Like, you need to work the hardest because you're struggling the most, Not quitting and making excuses, but actually saying that every member of the team is the most important member of the team. No part of the team operates without any other part of the team, right? Which means if you're struggling the most, your responsibility is to work the hardest, right? And that's something that not everyone in life can get behind. It burns people out or they feel overwhelmed. And that's also their responsibility to address that and really be honest with themselves on what they want and what they want to do and what they're willing to go through. If you're not willing to go through the grind, you don't have to. No one's telling you you have to do this. But if you want to be here and be on this team, you've got work to do, right? And so DSR burned me pretty bad to the point where I said I'm not leading an ultimate static again. Like it was too much to deal with. Like I can't be teaching 7 people how to play the game. I can't be reviewing the mitigation sheet with people every week just for it to be forgotten the week after. I was very frustrated to the point where like I just didn't want to do that again. And then when Fru came around and we had done Savage and people were having a good time and people were like, "Nem, what's next? Are we going to do top? Are we going to do Fru?" And I didn't want to do either of them not because I don't enjoy the Blackmage side. I love learning Blackmage. I love learning the rotation. I love learning and mastering it. I love doing the fight. But I don't love having to be responsible for everyone else and teach them every little thing and hear the same questions week after week. How does APOC work on week 3? How does APOC work on week 12? How does APOC work? How does APOC work? How does UR work? What is a mitigation sheet? Do I heal here? Where do I reprisal? And it's like, we've been on this mechanic for months, and I guess I don't understand why you don't know, right? Like I've provided the resources. We've talked about the resources. I've gone over it with everyone. I've looked at everybody's logs. I've gone over your casts. I've compared them to comparable teams of middle of the road DPS. So I'm not pushing you too hard here. Like I'm just asking you to do your part. And it's not getting done. And that happened in DSR. And then it happened again a little bit with Savage. And we had some new people. And then it really kicked in Fru. All the while, I'm PFing Fru from day one. And I'm not frustrated. Day one, first 3 weeks of Fru, I wasn't frustrated even with PF. They were getting stuck at Diamond Dust, and I was like, yeah, we'll get through it eventually, whatever. But it was fun, It was fun, and it was new. And people were trying. They were making mistakes earnestly. They were showing up. Some people really didn't come prepared to know what Ultimate was about and what it would be like, and that's okay. I had people that were like, this actually isn't for me. Like, this is way too hard. This is way too much work. I don't want to do this. Totally fair, man. Like, it's not for everyone, But then became the raid leadership problems came up again. The schedule got even tighter, and people needed more practice to get past their mechanics because they weren't putting in the work. They weren't putting in the hours and the work that they needed. Because every person is going to prog at a little bit of a different pace. It depends on how quickly you learn, how quickly you adapt, and honestly how much work you put into it. And so I was stuck in a situation where people needed to put in more work if they wanted to clear this fight anytime in 6 months. And I told them, like, if we take 6 months, I can't go through that again. I cannot go through that again. And here we are, it's May, and it came out in November. It's just about 6 months. And so I'm very frustrated with the team. 6 months of PFing as well, and going through these PFs where you realize, like, it's the same thing that my static is experiencing. Other statics are in the same boat, where their leaders sitting there trying to drag them kicking and screaming across the finish line, and they just won't do what they need to do to get there. They're stuck. These players are stuck, And then not just with other statics, but then in Party Finder, it's like you still get those same people where, like, hey, we are a P5 prog, and everyone here is supposedly seeing P5, but then like 2 players can't get through P1. Why? Oh, is CACT bot down? Oh, I don't know. ACT isn't working. Are add-ons not working for people? Is that why they're messing up? I don't know. But you get these people who supposedly have experience, and then they spend, I kid you not, 4 hours wiping to P1. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems excessive. So then that changes. As PF changes, 7.2 rolls around, and you're still just dealing with other people's mistakes 90% of the time, right? Maybe 85, 80%. Most of the time, you're like a fairly consistent, but memes happen. You do have a prog point, right? And then it comes down to people not wanting to study VODs, people making excuses. I don't want to look at a log. I want to figure it out myself. And it's like, man, it's going to take you a long time to figure that out, and it's going to add a long time to our prog point. We're going to be stuck in a rage, I swear to God. And then here we are, stuck in a rage, Where you try to, like, lay out a path, like, if you make these decisions, you will get the good outcome. If you make these other decisions, you'll get the bad outcome. And they still make the other decisions. And for some of them, there's good reasons. They have real life stuff come up, IRL, whatever, problems, like, totally understandable. But for some of them, they just want to play other games. They just want to do other things. And there's, like, that lack of commitment to getting the fight done. Everyone's supposed to be moving in the same direction on the same mission, but then they aren't. You know what I mean? There's, like, varying degrees of dedication. And so it gets to a point where expectations are not being met. People are stopped doing their self-studying in the static, and in PF it's the same way, where people are coming woefully unprepared. A lot of people coming not with their BIS and then doing, underperforming on damage, or saying, I'm ready to clear, I'm ready to help you clear, and then after 7 wipes from that one player, they're like, I was derusting the whole time. But there's a lot of lying going on. There's a lot of deceit and a lot of disappointment all around. The closer we got to clear, about a month ago, my team was still on P4 CT, and I was pushing for clear. And I said, I really want to clear this fight. I feel like it will be healthy for my mental. I'll come to raid as a better raid leader because I won't be carrying this baggage of this unmet task, this incomplete task that I want done. And also, I'm someone who, as a raid leader, I feel like I need to know the most so that I can be the most helpful to the people around me. And so that extra grind every day, just like my team needs to succeed, I need to help them succeed. Grind. And then you start seeing the same behaviors in PF from multiple people. Well, like, when you go into NAPF, you know who the memers are. You know who the prog liars are. You come to know them because you've partied with them for 20, 30 hours. Like, you know who they are for the most part. Right? And so you go, all right, I don't want to join that group because so-and-so's in it. Maybe they've improved since then, but I don't know if they have. And this person they're just going to screw around for like 6 hours. Like, they're going to lie about their level of preparedness and then take advantage of the people who believe their lie, saying, I promise I'm clear ready. And it's like, you have never seen past first Fulgent. Are you sure you're clear ready? And this happened in DSR too. When DSR was new, you had players being like, I've seen P7 one time, I'm ready to clear. And like, you're being dishonest, really being dishonest. And so after months of this happening, where join a clear party, one person messes up, it falls apart. Join a clear party, one person messes up, it falls apart. Join one clear party, one person messes up, it falls apart. And at varying degrees. Sometimes they're clear for once, usually they're not. Usually it's just that you get the prog liars in, and after months of both the static and the party finder kind of emulating each other's behavior, there's just this knowing sense of failure. You know it's going to fail before you even start. It's super negative. And in my mindset, you know, as someone who like comes from a Ninja Gaiden background and comes from a get shit done background, like even in my work, like I don't even take lunch breaks. This kind of guy, I don't take lunch breaks every day. I never take a lunch break, right? I'm very much just push through and get it done type of person. Same with like when I play a very difficult game like Ninja Gaiden or something like, you know, those bullet hell games, you know. When it comes to Final Fantasy, I'm a push through and get it done kind of guy. And that leads to a mindset, right, of just push yourself until it's done and then it will be done. But if you don't, you're going to be sitting there resting, getting worse at the game, making no progress, and then it will weigh on you. And then when I show up to raid with my team, you know what happens? And you know what actually happened in Fru? Because I did this. I took a break, and you know what happened? I ended up making mistakes on mechanics I already knew. I had like one raid night where I had a vacation. I took like a couple weeks off for vacation, and then I came back, and I was garbage. And then I like worked on it for a little bit, and then I took another day off, and I was garbage again. Hold on, there's somebody at my door. Okay, sorry about that. Anyways, so what I was saying is that after all this time, right, you get this frustration and you get all these just problems, and it builds up, and you start to notice the patterns in people's behaviors. And so you see these people come in unprepared, they speak generally the same way, they say the same things, and then they get the same results, right? You can see it in their movement, you can see it in how they respect the people on the team, you know right away. So with that white mage in my last video, I was in a party with them for a while and I had no problems with them. I didn't get frustrated until they invited their friends, which I've had other people do, and then their friends mess up and goof off and we don't get it done, and it happens every time. Was the damage of the tanks really a problem? For most pulls it was, yes. They didn't know their rotations, they weren't playing their best, and I think that it's everyone's responsibility. You don't have to be perfect, but to be trying your best. I don't want to hear, oh, LOL, I haven't been in here in a while. Oh, LOL, I don't really know my rotation. What is my rotation? And it's like, man, you wouldn't say this during like a charity event, you know? You wouldn't say, sorry, I don't remember how to help you, you know? And then just leave it at that. You'd be like, hey, we're going to do our best here. Hey, no problem. Let's get the job done. Like, you're going to be positive and you're going to be encouraging and you're going to be reassuring that you are there to help. It's very unusual to find someone who is going to join something to be helpful and they're just going to talk about how great they are. They're going to make jokes with their friends the whole time. And when the person they're there to help shows a little bit of upsetness, a frowny face in chat with no other words, you think that would signal to them like, hey, can we take this a little more seriously? I'm getting a little upset here. I'm getting a little disappointed. But they have no awareness of other people's emotions. It's almost narcissistic. Where it's like, all right, everything's about you. I see how it is. Everything's about you. Okay. You're in my party to help me, but it's all about you and your fun and your feelings. Right? And so that's why when it comes to my last video, right, the frustration built up for a long time. And when you deal with this day in and day out and day in and day out and day in, it can be hard to relate to, right? Imagine like working a job where you get, I don't know, what's a good example? Where you're on a team and you have a deadline. You're burning out at work. You're working overtime, 100-hour work weeks. I'm sure many of you can relate to this, right? It's like 2 a.m. in the morning. You were supposed to go home at 5. You're at the vending machine praying for some kind of snack to give you hope in humanity. And then when you buy the snack, it like sticks in the vending machine and it doesn't go all the way down. And you shake the vending machine and suddenly you're just like, there's no way this is happening. There's no way that I've put in this much work and this much effort, went into the surgical ward, fixed the computer in there, saved someone's life, participated in saving someone's life, and then all of a sudden I can't even get a snack out of the fridge. Like I'm gonna die, you know? Where you've just had those hell shifts. It's like in that moment, one of your team members who's with you in that hell just looks at you and just is totally goofing off, doesn't care, has no relatability, has no idea that everyone else around them is taking it seriously or suffering, just totally in their own world about themselves. You would be off put by that, you know? And so that's why when you get like these, I don't know how to describe them, these people that do this thing, it's off-putting. And it's easy to like try to find the good in it, to be like, they were just trying to make it light. They were just trying to be positive. No, because these people have been in PF quite a bit. They just don't care anymore. They've disconnected themselves from other people's struggle because it's no longer theirs. And that is unfortunate. So that's why I still have a problem with the tanks, and I have no problem calling them out, you know. I don't want anyone to witch hunt them. Like, people like them. Some people like them. That's great. Continue liking them. Some people don't know them. I don't know of anyone who doesn't not like them just because I don't, and that would be really weird, in my opinion. But I don't like them. I don't appreciate how they acted. It's because I see through their bullshit, you know? Because you see the same people in other people in your life. You see the same behaviors, and it's the same psychology that causes them to make the same decisions, you know? You see it everywhere. And so, for me, after leading a static that has been very, very stressful for while, and a team that takes so long to clear that I never really get much of a break. Like, I took like a week off around Christmas last December, and that's it, where it's just like I am exhausted, and that's understandable, right? Understandable to feel frustrated and angry at these people when you are putting in so much work and your teammate doesn't put in much work at all because they think they're so awesome and they can just do it and they can get away with anything. They don't really read the room before coming in and trying to be the center of attention. And I think that's, anyone out in the real world has dealt with this, you know what I mean? And so I called them out on it because I don't give a flying cluck whether you like being called out or not. You know, like, everyone is accountable for their actions. That's just the way that I take it. And if it, you know, makes you feel some certain really negative way, you're like, that really embarrassed me, I wish you wouldn't do that. All right, hey, no problem. I have no problem respecting that if you let me know about it. But that's more of a one-on-one, like, oh, you don't want me to do that? Hey, I can do that for you if you know, you're not somebody that I actually hate, which is few and far between. But realistically, I would bend over for just about anyone. If someone said, I'm embarrassed by what you did, I'd be like, all right, well, I'm not going to go out of my way to embarrass you, right? But yeah, that's it, you know? White mage accidents, warriors just making excuses, claiming that they're the victim, and goofing off. So we blacklist and we move on. And then for the frustration, it's been a long road, man. Like, I don't know if even half this player base can comprehend the amount of hours that it leads to, but let's take out my 16-hour days that I've put in. Let's just drop that down to 8, and let's pretend you did 8 hours a day in PF for 30 days. It's a lot of hours, man. And like, FF logs and Tombstone, GG, or whatever, like, it doesn't really matter about the funny numbers, right? And not every pull is going to be everyone's perfect. I have pulls that can be improved as well, right? But for the most part, your aim should be to be middle of the road for your job. If everyone in your team is like middle of the road, you're going to get your clear. You know what I mean? Aim for that. Be working towards that, practicing that. And everyone has different reasons. Like, for healers, for example, healers get nervous in Party Finder because they don't trust their other healer, or sometimes their healer does something in an unexpected way. And the truly good healers are experienced enough in Party Finder to recognize those things, and they've already done it and been through it, so they kind of know how to react to them, which is a learning process. But outside of that, healers can have an extremely easy way of studying a mit sheet and a log. Especially, you need to pair it with that log, but you can pair those things together, and you can sacrifice damage during prog to learn the ease of when to cast those spells. You don't need to, no one's expecting you to do full DPS uptime and learn healing at the same time. That's what makes healing a little bit easier. you also have to be comfortable with the idea of actually knowing what you're doing so that when someone dies to excess damage, they're not looking at the healer and saying, healer, why didn't you heal? You need to be confident to say, I don't normally have to heal there, so I just didn't make up for your mistake, but you did make a mistake that you shouldn't make, right? That's also on the healers to kind of defend themselves a little bit, because they do get a little bit too much hate from people when it's not their fault. It's easy to blame a healer when it isn't always clear that they were not to blame. But being a healer does have its benefits. It can be a lot easier because you can just skip out on a lot of what you're capable of doing and just focus on the bare minimum and build up from there. Whereas like when you play Blackmage, like, sorry man, like learning that rotation takes reps, practicing it, figuring out what you can fit in. You'll spend hundreds of pulls figuring that shit out, hundreds of pulls. You don't build on it iteratively. You are constantly like, what is the optimal rotation, and trying to squeeze it in from the beginning. It takes a long time, That's why, as a support main who swapped to DPS, why DPS has kept me engaged in the game much longer than support did, because support is kind of boring. Playing tank is kind of boring. After you do it for a few years, you're like, I've kind of seen how this goes. If you're not super into that hyper fantasy of being the big man and tanking the big boss and taking the hits and going one-on-one with them, which I was totally about when I was 13, playing the Lord of the Rings online, right? Tanking a Balrog. I was totally for that. But now I want something where I have to think a little bit more to stay engaged so that I continue having fun. I like the challenge that Blackmage gives. And I can tell you, it's more challenging than tanking. It's more challenging than healing. It is, right? And learning it is more challenging than tanking and more challenging than healing by a mile, Because healing and tanking, once you get down to it, they are static, right? And it's how difficult that is to learn is going to vary from person to person. Difficulty, as we all know, it varies, right? It's subjective. Well, if you're objectively trying to compare, like, how long would it take you to pick up healing and how long would it take you to become a really good black mage, I think we all in the community know which one takes longer. That's why healers aren't the well-known meme of black mage stays in ley lines and dies. That's not because they refuse to move. It's because they're learning black mage, They're learning when to greed, when not to greed. How long to cast, where to put ley lines, what is the optimal amount of snapshot time on moving out of ley lines. There's a lot of intricacies, And so people get upset when I say like healers and tanks have it easy. I can tell you they do have it easier. They do have it easier than some of these DPS players, but they don't want to admit that because they're so pivotal in their roles. Like, it doesn't feel good to be told your job is easier. I can tell you right now, Astro is not an easy job to learn. Astro is like the black mage of healers. You know what I mean? Scholar has a lot of options too. Scholar has a lot to sift to be like, what is the optimal? If you're not actually, I don't know, learning Scholar before anyone else, it's not that hard because you just do what other people do. Just this is what the Scholar does, just do that, right? It works. But if there is no one to look at, the fight's not cleared yet, then yeah, figuring you have a lot of options with Scholar. That's respectable for sure, Just like Monk used to be the black mage of melees, and Gunbreaker was the black mage of tanks, the most complicated rotation, right? Like there are degrees of difficulty in each role. But what I'm saying is when you look at a black mage log, you have to memorize a lot more casts than a healer does. A lot more casts, You have to memorize, it could be like 170 casts on black mage versus 120 on a healer. And then you're going to say, healing's so hard. And it's like, there are stressful moments that come from healing. There are. But healing itself is not that hard. You're doing less. You're spending less time on it. And it's more forgiving. Because you have a partner to heal with, right? So it's one of those things where, like, I'm not throwing shade on healers when I say that, like, they have an easier time and a quicker time to pick things up because they have to do less, But there is a skill ceiling, There's a lot of room for mastery and there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of respect to healers. But it bothers me when I'm in a static with someone where it is easier on healers to look at a log and a video and see and a mit sheet and be like, oh, that's what I do. And your spell speed doesn't really matter on healer. Everyone's doing the same thing, and you can't put in the work to learn that. That really bothers me, right? Because if you have someone right next to you doing 10x the work to learn their class, that should be a moment of self-reflection. It's like, my team is working so hard. I want to live up to stand next to them. I want to put in the work too, you know? And seeing people like find any excuse to shirk that, that's what bothers me when it comes to healers and tanks, is that they do have it a bit easier. You know, now there are certain mechanics where it is a support mechanic. Let's take P7 DSR. Tanks, man, they got it a lot rougher than everybody else. You know, they're playing their actual job isn't harder, but they compensate that by giving them more responsibility. So it's like, it's a give and take. There's healer intensive parts too, where it doesn't really matter that Blackmage is harder than healer. During this mechanic, Blackmage sits and casts Fire 4 and healers are freaking out. Like, that happens too, right? There's a little bit of love in every direction. You know, everybody knows that, you know? And that's good. That's good. No one should feel disrespected. But when I complain about healers and tanks, I'm talking specifically about players who do have a much easier access to mastery, but do not take advantage of it. So that's that. That's my take, you know. Anyways, maybe that clears some stuff up. Maybe it makes it worse. I don't know. But genuinely, my intent for this video was to at least say I was wrong about that white mage, 100%. And of course, I was mad. You know, a lot of people poking fun that I don't know some mechanics, that I just literally was mad and not paying attention to why a wipe happened. And that happens. It happens, man. It's going to be all right, you know. Anyways, that's my long-ass talk. Blip, bloop, blop, bloop. And, yeah. Right on, man. So we will clear through soon, I hope. And if we don't, hey, you know, we'll get there eventually. It might be time for a PF, but until next time, guys. I probably should say some more that I'm forgetting. This is Nem. We're going to cast Fire 4s and be silly gooses real soon. Thanks for the humble check in the comments as well, by the way. People being like, bro, like, yes, you might be super consistent, but you gotta be humble. Absolutely correct, my friends. That's my bad. I just let the frustration overwhelm me because, like, you know, when you feel like you're doing the best you can and others are not, it's disappointing. But next time we won't make that mistake. We will learn from it. So until then, and thank you for the support, by the way. The amount of DMs I've received being just nice to me, thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of you are like, not the best Nem, look Nem, but you need a hug. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And for those who are like, Nem, listen, I'm going to explain to you why this wasn't a good idea, but also you got this. Really appreciate that as well. Thank you. We all fall down sometimes, and sometimes we all need to be picked up. So until next time, see you later.